So, Jared,
Yes. How would you describe the Kazan of communism, kind of embraced communism, and Kazan who then later on supposedly embraced democracy? I mean, it seems to me that he kind of took an identity off the shelf. He went with the beliefs and ideas of those who he was surrounded by, or pressured by. While that may have had a really good influence on his art, I don't think it really got down to who the man really was.
Okay.
Actually.
I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
Is communism basically a democratic philosophy or not? Theoretically.
Theoretically, yes. In practice, no.
Okay. What we call Sovietism. What you see in the Soviet Union, what you see in China, North Korea. Yeah, okay, very good. I say that because I think Kazan didn't change. I think Kazan was always a democratic person. He was always for the oppressed segment of society. What you have to understand about Kazan, you saw America. He is from Anatolia. He is an Anatolian. He begins his film, I'm a Greek by blood, a Turk by birth, and an American because my uncle made a journey. And I think he always had these democratic views, and all his films have some political dimension. He's always on the side of the poor, no matter whether it's the 1930s or whether it's his last film or his last books, he always has that position. When he was a communist, he thought the Communist Party was also advancing that position. And that's why he was a communist. Why did he leave the party? Do you know why he left the Communist Party? Because they came and they told him what to do. He says, that's not democratic. And therefore he left for democratic reasons. If you read his autobiography, he will say, I left the party, but I continue to believe many of the ideas that it had. Too bad they didn't. I still believe in those things. Okay, this guy was 80 years old. He's got nothing, nothing to say. So in that sense, I think you got a wrong assumption here, but you got your finger on something. The constant is that he's a democratic person, and how he perceives that. And that's why the HUAC is such a horrible thing, because that's when the Democrat becomes a coward and doesn't live up to it. He always knew he'd done the wrong thing, but he never could admit it. He never could admit it publicly. That was that Anatolian pride. But people who knew him and so forth, they would say, especially as time went by, he realized he had made a mistake. And if you read his biographies, he never apologizes, but he'll say things like, I did the right thing, but maybe I shouldn't have. This is the correct thing to do, but was it the blah, blah, blah. There's always kind of a half admission that he made a mistake. What's interesting in that, in America, who is the hero of America? Mustafi's the guy who plays the hero. Who is he? What is his family background? His father was a leftist who was killed, who died from being tortured in a Greek concentration camp by the Greek military. And he chooses this guy to represent his uncle. I find that fascinating. I want to tell you something which you probably, I'm not sure, I don't know if you read that article or not. His great-grandmother in that film is an African-American woman. He cast an African-American woman as his great-grandmother. Well, that's not an accident. I mean, he's trying to make some kind of statement about race, multiculturalism, and so forth in his own Kazanian way. And on the waterfront, for instance, he's got a black dock worker among the rebel guys. He's got a small role, but he always plays he always is very compassionate. Well, if you know Hoboken in that time period, it was racially segregated, so there would not have been a black guy in that. So he's always kind of pushing those kind of things. That's one thing I find very fascinating about him. And I think Zapata, if he's Zapata, it really represents, Zapata is the guy he liked to be. And Zapata was militant, he made mistakes, so he was utterly democratic, and in the end of the movie, he gives up power because he doesn't want to be corrupted by power. Really interesting. I don't know if that quite answers your question, makes you think about something, but I hope so. Maybe you want to follow up, or?
I mean, because I understand that theoretically communism and democracy they're both in a sense mean well.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
But I mean, what comes down to how they're judged and how people judge them now is their actual practice.
Right.
So you can't. I mean, in a sense, to flip flop, in a sense, between one and the other, to realize, okay, yes, this in practice doesn't work. And democracy, especially the Western spin on it, has its flaws as well. But I mean, what does he come up with? You know, I mean, he's been on both ends. He's seen how they both work practically, and he doesn't, in a sense, say, "This is what I believe." You know, this is what I firmly believe on, and this is with regards to who pressures me. This is what I firmly believe on.
Well, I would just say that when he was a communist in 1934, 1936, Soviet Union looked different than it does in 1940, in 1960. In fact, one of his reasons that he gives for testifying, he says, well, sure, in 1935, the United States in the middle of the Great Depression, the Soviet Union all seems to be going in the right direction. Fine. 1950, we understand who Stalin is, we understand what they've done, and yet there are still people who think it's 1936. I don't. That's one of the justifications he gave in. So he would say he was consistent. That the same reason he joined them, the same reason he applauded them, is the same reason he denounced them. And he thought the Soviet Union was dangerous. And he thought that the last thing he would like to do is to have somebody like that run the United States. The other thing I would just say, I think his democracy, I was trying to say, his political statements are not made as political statements, they're made in the films. What he shows in the films. But you know, you're free to disagree. That's the great thing about movies, you can disagree.